We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was produced, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present.
It's October 2003 when Mike Wolo gets the call from a friend asking him to help out at his business. He's done it before, but doesn't want to do it this time. The business is a granite yard, and shifting huge pieces of heavy stone from shipping containers is just too dangerous. But then he gets another call. This time it's from his friend's dad. He relents. One last time can't hurt. When he gets to the granite yard though, he starts seeing red flags. They're working with a new crane operator. The shipping container is rotting. It's even more dangerous than before. Still, they got on with it. Mike's job is to slide straps under one end of the 10,000-pound granite slab so that the crane can lift it out of the container. Things are going pretty well, and they've only got 2 slabs left to move. That's until Mike hears his buddy yelling. He looks up and sees a sheet of rock getting closer and closer towards him. Within a matter of seconds, his head is pinned against the wall of the container by a rock that weighs twice the average car. I'm at Middleton, and this is Head Game. Today, a lesson in trusting your gut, the power of support networks, and what it takes to come back from the unthinkable. Mike, thanks ever so much for coming on my podcast, Head Game. Very interesting story. Talk me through the moment that you get the phone call from your friend, David.
Yeah, it's odd how I remember that day really well. Got up that morning, took my dogs for a walk, came back to the house, my phone starts ringing. David, who is my best friend, his brother is actually my best friend that we've been hanging around for 27 years, but David is also, the three of us are good mates. So I pick it up and he's begging me, hey, I need your help today. And, at the time he owned a granite importing business and begged me to help out to help operate the rigging, setting up the straps on the loads so a crane could lift them out of the container. And I point blank said, no, hate doing it. It's too dangerous. I probably helped him out like 6 times. And every time after I would do it, I'd say, okay, don't ask me anymore. That's not what I do for a living. And I was never really trained. I was never trained for it. And it's scary stuff to work around.
The call comes in from your friend. You point blank refuse. You're like, no, not today. Did you refuse because you had a gut feeling as well? Sometimes when you get that gut feeling, or was it just a numbers game? You thought, I've done this too many times. I'm not trained in it. It's a dangerous job. No. Or was there a gut feeling when you made that decision?
I think it's a little bit of everything, because I'm one of those people. When my friends call me for something they need, I usually never, ever say no. But that something told me, no, say no. I don't want to do it. You said it before. You didn't want to do it. So my inner id was yelling at me to say no.
And then you receive another phone call. Is that correct?
Correct. David's father calls me, who's just an awesome man. So he calls me up. He's like, Mike, I know you've already said no. I hate to ask you, but I promise this will be the last time. I got I got another person to help out, but he's never done it before. I'll take good care of you, but, I promise last time I'll hit you up. So, of course, I had to say yeah.
So you say yes. Can you remember the trailer turning up, and what was your initial thought? Was it, thank God it's here, we can get on with it and get the job done? Or was it like, this is something's different?
Yeah, all of us just said, oh, fudge, because the thing turned the corner and the container itself looked like they took it out of Boston Harbor. And the crane operator shows up late. But now the crane operator shows up and it's a different person than, operator than we've ever had in the past. So this guy kind of gets out, kind of has a chip on his shoulder. We're setting him up to park behind the tractor trailer so you can watch what he's doing. He argues with us and says, no, he parks it perpendicular to the tractor trailer. So he can't see while he's unloading and setting up and doing a blind unload. So he's like, hey, I'm in charge when I show up. If you don't like it, I can leave right now and you guys can eat the $5,000 you paid me, or we can go for it. So we said, okay, you're in charge, and, start setting up and get everything ready.
So you're 3 down and 2 to go.
Correct.
Talk me through the last 2.
So I go in there, I set myself in place. Anthony's behind me. He goes waiting for the other side. We're waiting for the crane operator to drop the straps down. I start getting the strap ready, and we're just waiting for everybody getting in their positions, waiting for David to get in his position to start instructing the operator. Next thing I know, I hear David screaming at the top of his lungs. And I don't know what he's screaming about. I just figured he's throwing a fit about something. So I'm like, what is he complaining about? And next thing I know it, Anthony had run over to me and grabbed me by my shoulder. We realized the stone was starting to fall on top of us. And I started running and looked up and saw what was coming at me. But at that point, it was, coming at me too fast. And that's when it fell on me.
What's your thought process when you realize that someone's trying to grab you off and then you turn around and realize that the stone is falling? Did you think to yourself, I'm not going to get out, I'm not going to be able to get out of the way? Or was there a small chance for survival to get out of there? Or were you just like, I'm doomed, I'm done?
There literally was no time, Ant. It was that moving that fast at this point and moving silently, which is amazing because it's literally a wall falling towards you and somehow moving silently. So if Anthony didn't give me the pull on my shoulder, we wouldn't be having this conversation at this point. But at least getting me going, I saw it coming, and I literally had no time to think about anything. People always ask me, did you see the light? Did you see a light flash in front of you? There's no time for that. According to David, he said that I tried to put my shoulder and try to stop it. Like, what are you going to do?
So this 10,000 pound bit of granite is hurling its way towards you. What do you feel in that moment, Mike? The pain, what's the next sort of thought process? What's going through your head?
The good news is I felt nothing because I was dead. I was dead for about 6 minutes. It actually crushed me by my head. And my point of impact was my left temple. And the top of the bundle fell over, pinned me by my temple against the other bundle of stone on the other side. So it's just kind of holding me in midair by my head. And
You're
crushed.
Fucking joking me.
No. I got a great website, nothing gory, but it gives you a better visual than what I'm describing here of how the stone shipped and whatnot. But the point of impact right here on the temple, and it crushed my face down to 2 7/8 of an inch wide. Don't know how gory you want me to get, but literally it, according to David, his brother AJ come running outside, the father, senior comes running outside, and they're all just screaming and crying like, okay, Mike, our friend of 27 years is laying there dead, because they said the blood was just flowing out. And my jaw ripped off and went sideways and broke in 3. My palate ripped off, broke that in 2. My left eye blew out of the socket. It was down below where my chin would have been. And my whole eye socket and everything was just destroyed. So they're like, okay, well, he's dead. And, they're doing the grieving. But David snapped out of it and just all of a sudden, thought of something that he remembered from, his elementary school days or high school days of, I think we got 6 minutes to get him breathing again before he gets brain injury. So he kind of looks at his father. The two of them jump up in the back of the container, start redoing all the straps onto the stone. And unfortunately, at this point, instead of 8 sheets of stone on my head, it broke in half over my head. So now there's 16 pieces of loose stone over my head. So David and his father redo the straps, and David just turns to the crane operator, and he's pleading with them to lift it because it just, obviously hold my head, and I'm free floating in midair by my head. And the crane operator just put his hands out and said, "No, wait for the fire department to get here." And of course, everyone's like, "Well, what are they going to do?" There's no time. So there was a fabrication shop next door, a granite fabrication shop that we were friendly with. They hear all the commotion. They come running outside, and these are friends of mine. Bunch of Brazilian guys, so little guys. They all come running out and climb up on the machine. They were just going to yank the operator out and take over the controls. So the guy kind of realized he's probably going to get his ass kicked by these guys, and so he just lifted the bundle of granite off my head, and I flopped down onto the bottom of the container.
And you're completely out of it at this stage, right?
I'm done. There's no breathing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. There's not even any little flashback coming in, or little, that you're dead. You're dead. Yeah.
I'm gone. So they now meanwhile, poor Anthony. It was his birthday. This poor guy is there helping us out for the day. His mother is our office manager for the company, so she's out there, calling 911 and just in shock. And so we're waiting for first responders and everybody to get there. So Anthony pulls me out from underneath the stone. AJ and David get me down to the ground, and they want to, they can't give me mouth to mouth or anything like that because I have no mouth. So they knew, they had to empty out and free up some airways. So they flipped me upside down, and that emptied all the blood out of my airways, and I started kicking. So that was a good sign.
And obviously at this stage, your brain has it's just, for some freak reason, it's missed your brain completely. It's almost crushed in under your brain and taken everything out under your brain. Sorry to get graphic, but just so I can get a good visual of it.
Yeah. So the way they described what they were viewing these poor guys had to get up on top of the bundle of stone and walk across over my head to get to the other side to put the straps on. So they saw a lot, and my heart goes out to them because I got knocked out. I didn't have to witness the horror, and I'm sure poor Anthony lives with it every time he has a birthday. But they said the top of my head looked like a huge mushroom ready to explode over the two bundles of stone, and everything else below is just covered in blood. The floor of the container at this point has this gigantic puddle of blood. Back then, I only weighed about 165 pounds tops, maybe a little bit less. And somebody of my size only has 9 to 10 pints of blood. It was calculated I lost 6 pints of blood. So when they got me down on the ground, David, AJ, and Anthony, they were taking turns holding my skull together because they said they could see right inside of my skull and see everything going on. So they said the blood was just, wouldn't stop. So finally, police officer shows up first. He sees what's going on. And according to them, he kind of put his hand on his holster and he's looking around and like, "What are you doing?" He thought I got shot by a shotgun to the head. He thinks there's a weapon involved. Like, no. He got his head crushed in the container. So he's like, okay. So he runs over to his cruiser. He gets a medical kit, kind of slides it over to them. Like, medical kit didn't, as we both know, didn't have
I don't mean to laugh, but when they're pulling your skull out of your airway, I doubt that a medical kit at this stage is going to help. But I suppose that's complete panic, right? It's complete shock. People are just like, trying to do their best to help you. So just go back to when you kick. So they're picking. I can only imagine they're picking whatever they need to do out to get you breathing. You kick. Do they think that that's just a sort of a nerve reaction and that you're dead, or at this stage do they actually get hope and go, Mike is alive?
They had hope. Once again, they had flipped me upside down to empty out all the blood, plugging up everything. And they said I was kicking, maybe move my arms, but they said they could see bubbles coming out of what must have been my sinus cavity blown open around my skull. So they're like, okay, well, he must be getting air. And but they said it felt like an eternity waiting for the ambulance to get there. And finally the crew shows up, and their face is apparently like, oh, okay, this is awful. And they said they picked me up, threw me on the gurney, and immediately brought me to the ambulance. David was trying to block the ambulance from leaving, saying, hey, you guys can't drive with him to the hospital. You can't make it there in time. Like, you got to call in a helicopter. Of course, David's in shock. He doesn't realize a helicopter was already waiting for me down the street, and they were just trying to stabilize me. I got to meet the crew, all the crew that saved me, and they said that they were opening up 2 units of blood at a time, and it was just going in and right back out of me. So they knew, like, okay, we got to hurry up and get him over to the helicopter, because they knew my organs were starting to shut down, and I was still maintaining somewhat of a pulse at this point. So they got me to the helicopter crew and, got me back to the hospital within 15 minutes. That probably would have been more like a 40 or 45-minute drive. And unfortunately, a lot of guilt for everybody. I think the ambulance, I think they all assumed I was going to be an organ donation. There was very little hope of, okay, his head just got crushed. What are you going to get out of this, except for somebody in a vegetative state?
When's the first time that you wake up and you realize where you are and what happened? Can you just talk me through the first time that you realize, wow, I'm still here?
Literally nothing. I recollect nothing until about 7 hours later. I'm in the hospital, in intensive care, and my family now all arrives to the hospital, along with David's entire family, and they meet with all the surgeons, and they sit them down in a big conference room, and they kind of give them the whole spiel, like, Mike's a very sick boy. We don't think he's going to live. We give him about a 2% chance, and maybe it's best now to go in there and, say what you need to say, and perhaps, say goodbye. So at that point, I have 4 brothers. So they enter the room first to say goodbye. And that's when I wake up out of the coma.
Wow. So everyone's in there saying goodbye. They sort of hoping that you can hear, maybe? Was that the type of goodbye where they were just saying, look, I love you?
They were saying what they had to say. I was not hearing it.
You wasn't, not one word?
No, I in the meantime, I have a very real dream. An old friend of mine that I used to work with, who, next thing you know it, he's visiting me in my dream. And I know he had just passed away about 6 months prior. And he sees me and he says, Mike, you're not supposed to be here. You're going to be fine. Do me a favor, check in, make sure my family's doing okay. You're going to be fine. And I wake up. And I could barely see because my eyes, one eye blew out of the head, and of course they put it back in. But the description of what my eyes looked like were miniature eggplants being placed over where my eyes were, and just 2 little slits. So I can see straight ahead, tunnel vision, anything. I can see my second oldest brother and my youngest brother sitting by my feet. And all of a sudden I move my hands around, and I feel tubes and cables and all this stuff all on top of my chest. So I start picking up everything, and I'm like looking at it because I don't know where I'm at. I have no idea what's going on. And next, my oldest brother, John, he's by my right shoulder. He starts whispering in my ear while he's holding my hand. It's like, Mike, if you can hear me, you were in an accident. You're in the hospital. Mom and Dad are down the hallway. And he's kind of cueing me in what's going on. So I start squeezing his hand. So he immediately gets excited and turns to the nurse in the room. He's like, hey, he squeezed my hand. She's like, that's just reflexes. He's not capable of responding. So, of course, my brother, being who he is, yeah, right. It's like, Mike, if you understand what I'm saying, squeeze my hand once, yes, 2 for no. So I'm squeezing the hell out of his hand. He's like, he's squeezing as hard as possible. So she's like, okay, well, that shouldn't happen. So my youngest brother starts running down the hallway, bust into the conference room where the doctors are still giving my parents, all the information they're going to need for, what do you do with the body type of situation. And gives them the news, Mike just woke up, and next thing you know, the door kicks open, and it wasn't a very big room. I still remember it really well. That room went from having, 4 or 5 of us in that room to like 14 plus people. Like, it just filled with doctors and specialists. And the chief surgeon, the chief of trauma there, who was the one sitting down with my parents, he just finally raises his voice, like, everybody clear the room, out. But he stops my parents, like, you two stay. And, they were asking me all these questions, and they let my parents hold my hands to answer the questions because I have no mouth. And that was a bizarre moment for me because I'm still trying to take it in of, okay, what happened? I didn't quite remember, getting in an accident. I do remember the pain though. And like, why the hell is my entire body screaming in agony right now? And I do remember a nurse finally give me this device and show me how to press this button. If you're in pain, this will help shoot some pain, morphine, I assume. And I'm hitting that thing like I'm playing a video game. Of course, it's not doing jack shit, but I'm clicking that sucker away, and I probably kept that thing clicking for a half hour. It was that there's no words to explain the pain when your entire body from toes to nose is just screaming in agony.
Wow, Mike. So basically your first memory since the accident was that dream, that vivid dream that you had where your friend who'd recently passed away came back and said, Mike, this isn't your time. Bang, you sort of wake up from there. What's the recovery like? And is it still touch and go at this stage?
They give my parents a heads up that, hey, he's not out of the woods yet. Like, I need massive reconstruction at this point. I broke my neck. I fractured my C1, my C2, my shoulders, tore my shoulder. My entire face, being less than 3 inches wide, is completely now, because it's 7 hours later, the swelling is larger than, a basketball. My eyes, I can't really see because the massive swelling in my eyes. And of course, I'm tripped out on morphine, and I'm not good with, I never did drugs or anything. So the morphine kind of made me a little crazy. And I kept on trying to get out of the bed and escape. So they induced me in a coma for a couple days, waiting for the swelling to go down well enough so that a surgeon can, reconstruct my face. And I was very fortunate. The surgeon they called in is a world-renowned plastic reconstructive surgeon, as well as an ear, nose, and throat doctor, dual board certified genius. So they call him up and like, we need to look at this kid. We don't think he's going to live, but he's in the MRI right now, or a CT scan. Like, you might want to take a look and see what you can do. So he's like, yeah, I'll be right over. He took a look at me while I was in the machine. He's like, give me a call when the swelling's down. And 1 week later, through a miracle, my swelling went down so fast that he was able to, do reconstruction. At that point, now I'm awake. Like, I'm, no more being induced. I kind of know what's going on. I'm not eating. I can't talk. I'm communicating with my family, but I'm also just tripped out on morphine and having terrible hallucinations. And I'm trying to write to my family, and I'm thinking everybody's out to get me, and anxieties through the roof. And so I had a bad incident that moment, later on that same day, that I had a trach tube to breathe, obviously, because I have no mouth and nose. And it had clogged on me, and I couldn't breathe. So I wake up from another a hallucination, that I'm being choked out, and realize I'm not breathing. The call button for the nurse had fallen off the side of the bed. So with my broken shoulder side, there's a string attached to the remote, and I'm sitting there with my fingers trying to get it back off the floor or back onto the bed, and I'm pressing the button for help. And finally, the nurse replies over the loudspeaker, "Can I help you?" I'm like, I can't talk. So I'm smashing the remote against the bed rail. Next, two nurses come running in the room, and I'm pointing to my trach tube, and they pull out the trach tube, and red starts shooting across, the bed, the room, and the two of them start screaming. And I don't know what's going on. I'm thinking my jugular just popped or something. Why is it red? And thinking, okay, I'm dead. So it happened again a few hours later. So now my family comes back in to visit me, and I'm writing, and I've saved every single note of when I was in the hospital, in the rehab hospital, until I was able to speak, of what I was saying to people. And I'm like, and I'm begging them, get me out of here. If you leave me in here tonight, I'll be dead by tomorrow. At that point, my mother takes off her jacket, throws it on the chair, says, I'm staying. And she turned to my dad and my brothers and said, pack me a suitcase, pack me up some clothes and some toiletries. I'm staying here. And my poor mom, who's a saint, she slept on a chair for a week, taking care of me. And, it happened again, and she saved me. She saved me when that happened. And we realized what was happening. The way they were feeding me through a G-tube, they had the bed too far down, reclined, and that was causing it to come back up rather than sit me up better.
When your mum comes, which, I saw you got a bit emotional there. That's what parents do for their children, right? They go to high and hell water to make sure that, you're okay. When you realise that she's staying, does that comfort you? Do you think to yourself, right, I'm okay now? They're not out to get me anymore. That I don't have to be restrained. I don't have to be, I can relax a little bit. Was that a big turning point in your recovery?
Absolutely. Your mom's your mom. Your mom is there through thick and thin. Your mom would do anything. She'd jump on a grenade for you in a second. And my mom took care of me. And once again, the nurses, this hospital is an amazing hospital, but, like all hospitals, they can have a little bit more staffing. They can have less patients, but they're overbooked and understaffed. Every time you're cold, you're hot, my mom was right there in an instant to put a blanket on me, take a blanket off, pass me a jug to, take a leak. At this point, she was also protecting me because they set up a hopper next to the bed. They didn't want me using the bathroom. They didn't want me to look in the mirror. They had a sign apparently on the door of my room saying, do not let him see himself in the mirror. So that was mom being protective of me, really freaking losing it. So probably on the 11th or 12th day there, they sent in somebody to give me a shave. It's like, hey, I'm here to give you a shave. You've grown a pretty good beard there. Let me take care of it. So he's lathering me up, and next he's shaving me with the dullest disposable razor possible. And he does the trauma side first, which I don't feel anything. Okay. He could have ripped off the skin. I wouldn't have felt it. But then the right side, he's going over the same spot so many times. And I'm like, what? I can feel that. I'm like, okay, we're good here. So now he kind of cleans up my face. Like, oh, you look at you, you look great. And he pulls out a mirror and puts it in front of me. Look at you look great. And then all of a sudden his reaction was, oh, okay. And he quickly put the mirror away. And he's like, okay, have a good day. And he kind of booked it out of the room. And that's something clicked. Like, I want to go see what I look like in the mirror. So I remember my mom had just walked into back into the room. And so did one of my nurses. I remember Rose, short, beautiful little nurse. And I get up and I start trying to walk around the bed, and like, where are you going? And I point to the bathroom, and my mom's like, oh, we set up a hopper right there. And I write on the piece of paper, I want to look in the mirror. And the nurse looked at my mom and looked at me. She's like, I'll be back. Like, she knows I'm a very determined person. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going to go look at it. So I walked in there and I looked in the mirror, and the horror. You want to talk about a reality check. It's as soon as I put on the light and looked, I don't recognize what's looking back at me, except for the best way to describe what was looking back at me was, you ever see you're a little bit younger than me, but remember the movie Goonies from the 80s?
Yeah, of course. Hey, you guys.
Remember Sloth? So I look like Sloth, except for shorter and a little bit uglier, because I'm a lot shorter than what Sloth is. All I remember is my head was swelled out, beyond the basketball, but at the tip, it was pointed at the top. My left eye is moving all on its own. It's not tracking where I'm trying to look. My right eye, all the blood vessels blew out in it, so it's all filled with blood. Kind of looks like a demon's eye. And all I'm just thinking is, okay, life's over. I adore children. At this point, I have 5 nieces and nephews, and I'm like, kids are going to run away from me. What woman would want to be near me? I guess I'm never going to get married.
Wow. You're just looking at yourself in disbelief.
I go back to the room, back near the bed. And instead of going back into the bed, I sit in a chair by the window and I just start looking out. And, it's the city of Boston. It's beautiful at nighttime. And I just remember I kind of sat there and I started kind of feeling sad for myself, started crying a little bit. And I got my mother crying. And you don't do that. My mom had raised 5 boys. Any woman that can raise 5 boys is one tough woman. And my mom was like, described like a pit bull and a sweet woman, and I got her crying and I felt terrible. I'm like, I can't get my mother crying. So I decided right at that point, fuck this. I need to get out of here. So I grab a piece of paper and I had to set myself a new goal, and that is, I'm getting out of this hospital. I don't care what I look like. I'm getting out. And I was only in there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I was back home. They released me on the 32nd day post-accident.
So 32 days later, or 31 days later after the accident, you are released back home.
Yeah, 32 days later, I get released, and I stayed with my parents for just a week. By the end of a week, I was out walking every single day, and luckily my parents only lived 10 houses up the street from me. So I was walking back and forth, and, they got my dogs living with us up there for the week, and they were taking great care of me. And now my mouth was still wired shut, but my mom was able to, make me lasagna and whatnot and throw it through a blender, and life was getting better at that point. And within a couple weeks, I finally got my neck brace off, and then got my mouth, unwired. And, surgeon just made me promise him I wasn't going to try to down a T-bone steak that night. And, but the most important thing for me was the day after getting released, David was coming by to visit me. I said, hey, I need a ride somewhere first thing tomorrow morning. He goes, sure. He picked me up, and I made him bring me down to see all the first responders that rescued me. And that in itself was amazing, because I go in the door and ring the bell for service, and the gentleman comes to the desk. He's like, kind of does a double take, because at this point I still look like hell. I still have the neck brace on, but he wants to know what I'm there for. I'm like, I'm looking for the crew that worked on Friday, whatever date. And he's like, well, can I ask what it pertains to? I'm like, yeah, I'm here to say thank you for saving me. And he lost it, because he's like, well, some of the guys are here right now, and, they come running out, and, it was pretty important to say thank you to them, because as far as they knew, I was an organ donation.
What were their reaction? Were they like, I suppose they couldn't believe you were still alive. Were they just like...
They didn't believe it. They said the helicopter crew called a week after the accident, saying that they checked in at the hospital and found out that I had lived. And like, yeah, well, the guy's probably vegetable. Like, no, the guy's coherent. He's communicating. And it was on Halloween when they called them. So they thought they were messing with them. And they said, screw you, and hung up the phone on him. So now I come in, a few weeks later to thank them, and they're flipping out, because that morning they had a terrible morning right before my accident. they had a car accident that they went to, and it was a double fatality accident. So they were already having a bad day. So like, can you please come back next week where the rest of the crew will be here? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I come back the following week, and now I have all 6 people there. And they're like, we didn't believe the other guys when they said you were here. So, you know, it was very important and remarkable, because like, nobody ever says thank you. And you were the most disgusting thing we've ever seen that lived.
Wow, what a phenomenal story. And it also proves what the body is really capable of. The body just regenerating and growing, and what doctors can do nowadays. It's phenomenal, because I'm looking at you, Mike, and honestly, I would never have known that you've been in an accident.
Thank you.
And your mind is also, Mike, what was your sort of mindset, your mental toll, once you were home, going through recovery at home? What was that like?
There was lots of different emotions. You sat there, and when you were laying in the hospital, and you said, I'll do anything to get out of here. I'll sit in 5 hours of Boston traffic and love it. I will do anything and appreciate what I had beforehand, because you never appreciate what you have in life until you have a tragic accident like mine and whatnot. And so you never know what you had until you lose it. And so here I get the opportunity to a second chance at life. So you start kind of looking at things differently. And,
absolutely.
You start looking at, am I happy with myself? And is there room for improvement? And I was growing up, I had insecurities just like any normal person. You have, whether it's your looks, your height. I always had insecurities about my height. I'm 5'7" maybe on a very good day. And I wasn't an ugly person, but I wasn't exactly a Brad Pitt. So you sit and say, man, I would have given anything to have my old face back, because it took a long time to get this end result of what I look like today. It took almost a year before all the swelling went down my face, and some minor, touch-ups on adding more tissue back to my face to level it out.
And that was a year process. So you got home, and the reconstruction of your face took about a year.
Yeah, the initial major reconstruction happened on that Halloween while I was in the hospital. Yep. And, they reconstructed me with 110 titanium screws and 20 plates in my face. And so the mental toll now you talk about post-accident is anxiety. I developed agoraphobia, afraid to leave my safety zone, my home. And I didn't realize it, what I was dealing with. I'd go up to visit my parents. I'd be up their house for 5 or 10 minutes, and I'd find an excuse to go back home.
Wow.
That lasted for how many years, and took a toll on me. And finally I got some help, spoke to, I think, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, I can't remember which, but I finally get told, yeah, you have agoraphobia. So I had to kind of come up with some mental antidotes, because he tried me on medication. That did not work for me. I did not like being on a medication. It felt like it took me over, and said, I got to figure out a different way. And I took a job, the job I have today, that made me travel 1,500 to 2,000 miles per week. And that got me away from my home, and just built the antidotes of, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to go here. I'm going to stay at this hotel. And I just created little protective, barricades in my mind of that, how I'm going to be safe. And it is proven to work really well.
So you sort of took the reverse effect. So you, instead of staying in, you were like, right, I've got to get away. I've got to travel as much as I can just to keep that process rolling over, to get over this fear of locking myself in my house and, feeling like that every time I step out of the front door, that something's going to happen.
Yeah. And then, I also dealt with going out in public and people staring at me. Obviously, I was deformed for quite some time. So if it wasn't for David and AJ get me out to, going out every night, go to the pub, bring me out in the back room of the pub, get me away from the public, and have a couple of beers late at night, and try to teach me, okay, you need to stay out of the house. You need to go back out in public. And this went on for a while. That took a toll. can't go to the pub every night for a couple of years without gaining a lot of weight. So I started working out with the local semi-pro American football team, and started working out with them. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, I get asked, "Hey, why don't you dress for the first game coming up?" And I thought the coach was just crazy because, my insecurity of being short. I'm like, look at me, I'm tiny. I'm at this point, I'm a few days away from my 40th birthday. But also, I'm keeping up with these guys on the field. I'm sprinting right next to them, catching up to them. And, the exercising routine was remarkable that I get the opportunity to start playing semi-pro football. And when you know it, a couple hours before the first game, I assumed I was just going to be dressing up and, being a mentor on the bench. They needed help on the defensive line that day. And, well, now I'm down to 175 pounds at 5'7", and 110 screws and 20 plates holding my face together. They asked me to play, and opening kickoff, I get in on the first tackle, call the huddle, and I get lined up against my offensive opponent is 6'2" 360 pounds. And his name is Weeble. And I haven't played full contact football in 22 years.
Mike, are you fucking mental?
I did get that. So I line up on him. The ball gets hiked. I run right by him. It was something out of a movie. I wasn't expecting to run right by him. I get to the quarterback and chase him out of the pocket. So this goes on for the first half of the game. And the coach can't believe it. So come halftime, he's like, "That position's yours. You won that." And I played 2 full seasons and retired on my 43rd birthday.
That is amazing, mate. Well, do you know what? What a phenomenal sort of way to end this podcast. It just goes to show, once you put your mind to stuff and once you've got good people around you that are pushing you in the right direction, you gain a bit of self-belief, a bit of self-confidence back in yourself, especially with what you went through, you can achieve amazing things. Now, one final question before I leave you, Mike. What has the accident taught you about life?
I think you need to embrace who you are and what you're born as in life. Accept your height, accept your looks, embrace it. Because if you have insecurities, it's just going to hold you back. My insecurities, it took me getting my head crushed by 10,000 pounds of granite to feel indestructible, to make me feel like I'm 6 foot tall, to make me feel like I can line up against anybody and go toe to toe with them. It's helped me in the workplace with confidence. So I would say is embrace everything you have, because you never know when to be taken away from you in a moment's notice.
Wow. That was amazing. You've certainly inspired me. Thanks ever so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you. Keep up the good fight and keep inspiring. Thanks for coming on Head Game.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thanks so much for joining me on Head Game. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our incredible stories. And leave me a review wherever you're listening. I'm at Middleton. Catch you again next time.